Good evening and welcome to the March meeting of the Salem Area Mass Transit District. And this evening our agenda includes a safety moment. We have a couple changes to our agenda which will be announced later. We'll have two presentations. We'll have a period for public comment. We'll have our consent calendar, which is approval of minutes from previous meetings. And then we have three action items on our calendar tonight. One is to adopt the STF Advisory Committee recommendations for the Federal Special Transportation Fund and 5310 ODOT funding. And we also have an item to adopt Resolution 2019-03 for qualifying equities approval of statewide transportation improved fund formula plan application modifications. And we will have a new item added to the agenda, which is H3, the purchase of buses. And then we will have general managers' reports and other reports from our board of directors. And with that, I will call the meeting to order, and I will ask Director Evans to lead us in the pledge to the.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Linda, would you please note attendance? I believe all of our directors are present. And I'll call on our general manager for our safety moment.
So I'll just focus on two items. So because of the wet weather here, I'll just remind everyone to be extra cautious in wet weather and be careful of slips and falls, especially out on the transit center where there is a lot of concrete. And we've also put at each of your stations some tips on how to use the microphones and how to help CCTV record your recording. So if you please hit your buttons. That's it.
Thank you.
Do it.
And for announcements, and I have one major announcement. 163 days until Saturday service starts. So we're really counting down the days. And we have some changes to the agenda tonight. We're going to reverse the first two items so that the STF fund will be the first item deliberated on, and then we will move on to the second item, which is the approval of the statewide transportation improvement fund formula plan. And then we have an added item which will be approval of or purchase of new buses. And that's the basic changes. And I have a proposed action item that will be brought up too if there is enough additional time. And with that, I will call on our general manager to introduce our first presentation.
So the first item up is the presentation of the CAFR report, and I'll ask Alan McCoy to introduce our presenter.
Thank you, Alan. At this time, it gives me pleasure to welcome Ryan Pasquarella from our independent audit firm, Grove, Mueller & Swank, to present the CAFR to the board and answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Al, for that. As he said, my name is Ryan Pasquarella. I work for Grove, Mueller & Swank. Our office is about 2 blocks from here, right over there. So I'm glad I did not drive over here this evening because I was afraid that there was going to be hail or something like that when I was out there. So I drove just in case. Nice weather today, absolutely. First of all, I want to say thank you to Al and his finance team. We come in and do perform the independent audit for the district, but the amount of work that the district has to put together for us prior to us coming out for the audit is a lot. I mean, finalizing all of your numbers for the year, making sure that you have all of the required work papers that we are going to need in order to perform the audit. So we come out and perform the audit like in November. But from July 1 basically through November when we're out here, they're getting ready for the audit. So in my mind, my job's much easier than their job because I just have to verify what they did at that point. I am here this evening to present the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. As Alan said, it's also called the CAFR. Nobody wants to say that name over and over. CAFR is a much better option. The district is required to receive an independent audit annually. It is due to the Division of Audits within 6 months of the end of your fiscal year. So it would have been due December 31st. This year, the district asked for and was approved for an extension through the end of January. And the document was finalized at the end of January and submitted timely with that extension approval in there. Our audit actually is really two separate audits. One is we audit the numbers that Al and his team put together in this document to provide reasonable assurance that they are free from material misstatement. There's a whole lot of words basically to say we understand, we've looked at it, we feel that it meets generally accepted accounting principles. I mean, things that should be on there for amounts owed are on there correctly, accurately, things are classified on there correctly. But we have determined, we've given a clean opinion on this document, which means that we feel that it is free from material misstatement, which is the best that you can get. As Al said, I'm here to answer questions for you, so if there's any questions that do arise during the presentation, please just stop me, ask the question, and we can go from that point. This document is the CAFR. You are not required to create a CAFR. You are required to create an annual financial report. But adding that word comprehensive in the front of this document does a few different things for you. First of all, it adds a lot more information into this document. There's a transmittal letter right up the front that really talks about the district and how the district is doing, some of the big drivers of the district and where the district's going. It's a very good, easy read to just understand the basics of what's happening. So a layman who picks up this document doesn't know a lot about the district. It's just a good starting point. There is also a lot of trend information in the very back of this document that's been added to call it a CAFR. In order to be called a CAFR, this document is actually looked at by a group of independent accountants, and they grade this to make sure it meets generally accepted accounting principles. I want to say this is your 4th or 5th year actually receiving that award in there. 6, somewhere in there. I went looking for it in here. I couldn't find the number in here when I was looking. So that is something that's actually started, fairly recently for the district, but it puts a lot more work on, the district staff to do it. But it is a great thing because it really demonstrates that the district knows what it's doing for financial reporting purposes, because not only I'm looking at it, but you've got people from around the nation, normally 2 or 3 people also look at this and say, yes, it does meet generally accepted accounting principles. So that is this document for you. I believe you actually probably received it a few months ago because this was dated in January, so it might have gone out to the board prior to this board meeting. The item I really want to talk about this evening is the federal compliance report, and I believe that is an insert in what you have in your documentation this time around. So on top of auditing the CAFR, since the district spends more than $750,000 in the fiscal year in federal funds, there is a federal compliance audit that is required. The federal government has laid out some very specific rules on if you spend federal money, what we need to do as auditors in order to test for compliance. That means the federal government has told us, here's the formula you use in order to determine which federal funding streams you're going to look at. And when you know what funding streams they are, here's what we want you to look at for compliance requirements for that funding stream. So a lot of really what we're looking at is if there is any type of a request for reimbursement, and a lot of your requests for reimbursements go to ODOT or directly to the Federal Transit Administration, does the district have strong documentation to support the number they asked for from the funding agency. And if they have strong information for that, is it very clear on who's put the information together? Has somebody else looked at it? Is there just a good internal control process around those documents? So that's a lot of what a federal compliance audit is. It's probably the most lengthy thing that we do, just because of the sheer number of requirements. I mean, federal money always has a lot of requirements around it, and so we spend quite a bit of our time looking at that. If you ever pick up one of these federal compliance reports, the best thing to do is turn basically to the back page, because the back page is where you are going to find if there are going to be any findings, and either in the current year or in the prior year. So if you happen to turn to page 9 in this document, this is the prior audit findings. So this is the findings that we had related to our audit last year, June 30, 2017. When I was here last year, we talked quite a bit about the finding that is in there and what the district was doing to make sure that finding did not happen again. The finding last year related to financial reporting and really your closeout process, because there was not a strong governmental accountant on staff to adjust all your year-end balances to where they needed to be before us as auditors got out here and looked at them. That is last year's finding. The very bottom of that page there, it says current year status. We do not have that repeat finding this year. Actually, we had very few minor adjustments to the financial records when we were out here. The numbers, if you happen to just reread that finding from last year, there are some pretty significant change in account balances that we reported for 2017. This year just did not happen. So we are reporting no findings for the current year audit. We are required to, once there is a finding, to talk about it again the next year. That's why you see it in here, and that's why you have the current status update in here, because this kind of closes the loop on that finding from the prior year. So the page before that, on page 8, at the bottom there's 2 sections that talk about current year findings, financial statement findings, none, federal audit findings, and questioned costs, none. So that's a clean compliance audit for the district for 18. So obviously some of what we talked about last year and, making sure that there are strong, accountants in the finance department, that has definitely happened. I know that with Wendy back again, it went a lot smoother this year, so we were much appreciative of that happening. The one, I'll say, kind of downside that is still happening related to last year's finding, when you have a finding like you had last year, you are considered to be a high-risk auditee for a 2-year time period. If we would have had a similar finding this year, the 2-year time period would have started over and it would have gone 2 more years. But what happens when you're a high-risk auditee, we are required to audit 40% of your federal money spent during the fiscal year as a high-risk auditee. A low-risk auditee, it's only 20%. So what that really means is sometimes we have to pick up new funding streams and look at new requirements, and really that just ends up costing more money for the audit at that point because there's just more documentation, more work that needs to be done. So for June 30, 19, you'll be high risk, and fingers crossed you'll be low risk when you come around for the June 30, 20th audit at that point. And I really don't see any reason why you wouldn't be low risk at that point based on our interactions with the finance department at this point. So the only other document that you would have been provided, and I can't speak if you received it in this packet or you received it back in January, there is a governance letter. It is just a 2.5 page letter on our letterhead that really just describes what happened during the audit. The reason for this letter is we don't always get the opportunity to sit in front of a board and talk about the audit. Sometimes this is all the board members get to see. This is a required communication between us as the auditors directly to the board at this point. But I don't really feel there's a lot of need to go over it because I'm really talking about what is in this document. And so it is part of your packet in there when you did get it. So that is what I wanted to talk about. Honestly, I'm very happy with the way that the audit went this year. I am hoping, and I'm sure Al's hoping too, that no extension will be needed for the next year. I think that's always a good goal to have. And historically, there hasn't been an extension. Obviously, there have been some turnover in staff that's really caused these issues previously, but I assume that we'll be done by the end of December 31 for this upcoming audit. So, are there any questions related to this presentation?
Director Kelly?
On page 9, under views of responsible officials, I just have one little slight question.
Okay.
And that's what does OPEB stand for?
There we go, back into here. OPEB. That is other post-employment benefits.
Page 13.
Yeah, and so what that is, actually, just let me read it here. Okay, so we are really just talking about the year-end adjustments that were required. One of the liabilities that the district shows on their balance sheet is their other post-employment benefits. That basically, for this year, it is the future payments set back to present value related to health insurance. It's really the implicit rate of the health insurance, which is a whole other conversation at this point, but it really just relates to what your rates are on your health insurance now versus if somebody before the age of 65 goes out and tries to get their own health insurance, it would probably be a lot more expensive just because of the nature of, well, going to the doctor quite a bit more. So there's basically an implicit rate that's been calculated by an actuary, definitely not by us. I wouldn't even have to get the slightest notion on how to calculate the thing. But that goes on your balance sheet at the end of the year. And so in last year's, those numbers were not adjusted correctly based on what the actuary said. And so we had to propose an audit adjustment for that last year, but not this year, obviously.
Okay. Thank you. It was an acronym that I was not really familiar with.
Other questions? Well, we're really pleased that we've had a problem here for several years, and the board realizes that, and we're very pleased, and we thank Al and his staff for getting us on board with the.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. And I'll call on our general manager for our next presentation.
Sure. Our next presentation is from the Executive Director of the Union Gospel Mission, Dan Clem, who is going to share with us a pretty exciting project.
Good evening. My name is Dan Clem. I am the Executive Director for the Salem Union Gospel Mission. Salem Union Gospel Mission is an exciting organization, and we're building a new mission. This is something that we've been working on since 1993, and the city has approved our conditional use permit. But now, as we are now filing documents related to design, site plan, finishing up the fundraising, and moving forward, we thought you might, on behalf of the Board of Directors, wanted to provide you this information in this brief presentation. And we call the new project Hope Has a New Address. Hope Has a New Address, we're hoping, will be 777 Commercial Street Northeast, which is directly across from the new Salem Police Department that's being built. So this concept sketch here is from across the street. It's viewing west from where the Salem Police Department would be. And I think I'm supposed to hit a button. This is the view of Hope Has a New Address from Division Street. So the entrance will be through a courtyard what we call Hope Courtyard, from Division Street, which is a stub street. This is a view northward with the chapel on the right, with the courtyard, the hospitality center in the middle. You can't see it really in the picture, but there are bike racks and outdoor storage bins off to the left. And then further to the left is a transitional home for men as they graduate through our recovery programs to be able to start building their resume for paying rent. Hard to see, but this is a map of the area. I wanted to give you an idea that the Union Gospel Mission has 7 different facilities. And as many of our clients and guests and staff move between those facilities, the thrift store, Restoration House, Greer Street, these are all transitional housing living facilities, as well as all the way to the north, the Samanka Place in Kaiser, where we serve 100 women per night and about 12 children per night. We really rely on the bus routes to be able to get our clients, guests, and staff to and from, as well as many of the volunteers that come into all of the 7 facilities. Union Gospel Mission is not part of a national organization other than an association for support and education between the Gospel Rescue Missions. The Union Gospel Mission of Salem was started by Salem businessmen and churches back in 1953 and operates solely on the benevolence of donors in the community. There are some small subsidies that Marion County provides for the post-prison residents in one of the facilities that we have, but for our operations and for our capital fundraising to date, for our operations, it's all private funds. Just to give you an idea that we really are seeing ourselves more and more as a recovery facility while we've been housing both shelter, meals, assistance services, haircuts, all the way from storage to getting mail to addictions counseling. We operate a New Life Fellowship program over an 18-month period. Men willingly, optionally move in to the facility and are there for an 18-month program that takes them from being dependent to independent and then entering back into the community restored and rejuvenated, employed, connected with a mentor, and with fellow graduates of the New Life Fellowship program. Much more than a shelter. A new mission means shelter for up to, under the current configuration of 5 buildings that were cobbled together over the last 65 years. At the current facility, being able to house 150 men a night, the new shelter will provide a maximum of 300 beds a night. We know that in the Salem, particularly the Salem area proper, that there are about 250 to 300 men per night that are unsheltered. And that statistic is about 8 years old. We used to house up to about an average of 218 men a night. So when this new men's mission, Hope as a New Address, was designed, it was designed with a couple of things in mind. That is, that we would not only be able to shelter that many men, but that we would be able to increase our recovery program and then be flexible for the future as the needs of the community change. But we see 116% increase, and folks, that's not because we want to, that's because that's what's out there. And tonight is one of the last nights we'll be able to house and shelter 198 men. Through the winter months, we were given permission from the fire department to be able to shelter 198 men, but 5 months out of the year. But on April 1st, that count will go back down to 150 men. So we're doing everything we can to find 48 guys beds after April 1st. It also means quite a bit of provision and meals. Right now, we feed, in January, almost 14,000 meals in a room that's probably 1/5 this size. We feed 10 men at a time. They rotate through. 10 people at a time. Takes about an hour and a half to feed 200 men, just dinner. And so the new shelter will mean we'll be able to, with dignity and respect, be able to continue to feed 3 hot meals a day, 365 days a year. So we're pretty excited about being able to provide that many meals. 97% of all the food that we serve at the men's mission, the women's mission, and the transitional homes, 97% of that is all donated. We've recently struck agreements with the food share to be able to provide more fresh produce and vegetables, healthier meals for the men and the women. Recovery means that right now we currently are able to house in the current men's mission 43 men in the 18-month program. A new third floor in a new mission will allow us to be able to enroll 78 men in that program. As well as education. One of the only 2 GED sites, online sites in the area. Men's Mission is a great opportunity with the Learning Center now to be able to obtain GED, as well as we have a special program where graduates of the New Life Fellowship program are able to enter Chemeketa with a 2-year degree paid for, or a 1-year trade certificate. So a lot of instruction goes on in the Learning Center, as well as preparation for employment, resumes, and reconnecting with folks online. So this black and white diagram is just a topographical diagram to give you an idea of what the current campus looks like. At the bottom where you see site plan, that's where the police department is on the other side of commercial. You can see how the thrift store stays in place on the right-hand side. Parking in the middle, and the men's mission, the new men's shelter, will replace a number of single-story structures that are there now, and you'll see Division Street off to the left. A little hard to see, but the first floor plan, I'm trying to give you a flavor of what we're really looking at here, is a layout of where the men enter in the hospitality area on the left, and they really enter I say this to a fault, a Broadway Commons day shelter, where in fact there's opportunities to meet directly with counselors, to go to a triage health services room and be able to receive some immediate care. Some of the guys come in from the streets, really need the help right away. And as well, the chapel, the dining room, showers, a hot room, where in fact 118-degree room, where their baggage can be stored, and that will make their baggage and their clothing insect-free. And so we're excited about being able to keep the place cleaner without having to use the current methods. But this is what Gospel Rescue Missions shelters generally do in today's contemporary sheltering. But as well, a full open commercial type kitchen where groups can come in and cook if they want to. We can use the night off, so if you want to come down and serve food or cook it, we'd be happy to have you come into our fully commercialized kitchen. We've got a chef from the East Coast that currently cooks down at the Men's Mission. Happy to buy you lunch for nothing any day you want to, but the food's absolutely wonderful, and that kitchen's been designed by experts. And so this is the first floor, and off to the right-hand side is the parking lot where the entrance is, where members of the public and the staff can come in. Second floor is the dormitory floor. This is where 222 men sleep in dormitories, all the way from 11 in a unit to 22 in a unit. This is exciting to understand that we've got a sick bay planned in here, a couple of sick bays, as well as we currently have 4 washing machines and 2 dryers. We'll have 15. We'll be able to meet the needs of the men. They can do their own laundry, as well as plenty of shower space, bigger stalls, plenty of bathrooms, and a couple of classrooms, as well as we'll be able to put together our administrative offices on this second floor. Elevators for many of our clients and guests are of limited mobility, so we're planning for being able to accommodate their needs. Right now in the current Men's Mission, you have to walk up about 40 feet of stairs, and so it makes it really tough for a lot of the guys. Third floor, this is what we call the New Life floor. This is 78 beds in 4-man apartments, where in fact they go through the 18-month recovery program. And as well, we're designing both the second and third floors so that over time, as maybe the needs, hopefully, for shelter will decrease the number of beds. We're designing these walls and these rooms so that we can increase the size of the amount of beds and space that we're allocating for the recovery program. We see ourselves long-term becoming more and more of a recovery-based program because we know that's transformation of lives really happens there. It's great to get the guys in off the street for shelter and meals and clean clothing and a shower, but it means a whole lot more when they've got a mentor, they're going through a program, and they're supported to be able to understand a lot of things that they need to work on. One of the first classes is a 6-week class on shame, how to get rid of it. And that's just the starting place. But after 6 weeks of lying to each other until there aren't any more lies left, it turns into a very positive experience. And so I will tell you, we're excited about becoming more and more of a recovery center, one that works and one that sticks. As well, on the 3rd floor, kitchenette. Right now, the men in the recovery program are sleeping feet away from the guys who just tripped in the night before. It isn't that we need to segregate them, but we definitely see a higher degree of success when they have their own facility, and that's been proven out in shelters throughout the country. Elevator access, learning center, doubling the size of the learning center, providing for classrooms, a separate testing facilities. So many of the courses are online now, and have requirements for separated testing room, as well as we're hiring 3 more mental health counselors to be able to deal with issues on the floor, on the hospitality floor, but as well as the 3rd floor as well. So 3 more case managers. We're excited about being able to serve more men with this facility. Just a project update. The conditional use permit for this project was approved last May. We're currently applying for modifying that approval to include 2 small parcels off of Division Street, which will allow us fully to develop the campus as I've shown you. Site plan, building design, and parking variance. We'll be before the Planning Commission in April-May timeframe. Sometimes that turns into June. But we're conducting a matching campaign right now for fundraising for remaining $2.9 million from the community. Looking at demolition on or about October 1st and groundbreaking next February to be completed December 31st, 2020. And just if you would consider letter of support for the project, or if in fact staff wants to study it or you have more questions, we're happy to be able to answer those. But I just can't reiterate enough how much we support and are appreciative of the support that you give. And here's what that looks like. Gal at Samanka Place has the ability to visit with her children at another facility. The bus passes that we've been able to obtain from you guys really accounts for anywhere from about 40 to 45% of all the getting around that our clients and our guests need to do. So again, those bus passes are immeasurably helpful for people who just need the help. So with that, if you do want to consider a letter of support, a general one or a very detailed one, I would make that ask. But in fact, very appreciative of you allowing me to have the time to share with you this project. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Well, thank you. It is a very exciting project, and it'll serve a lot of needs in our community. Are there any questions? Great.
Thanks, Dan, for coming. The bus passes are through the United Way Bus Pass program, correct?
They are, but of recent, we've had such an uptick in needs that we came in and asked for, and were granted, I think, 50 bus passes. And again, it's because we were running out of the ones that we were getting from United Way. Appreciate it, but need got greater than resource about a month ago, so I'm not sure how long the 50 will last. And those were primarily, Marcia, for Samanka Place. So 100 ladies, 12 kids a night. There's a lot of getting around to do sometimes.
Director Bush?
Sorry. Thanks, Dan, for coming. Recently, the Kaiser Chamber Greeters had an event at Samanka Place. Aren't they doing some upgrades to their playground and stuff as well?
Oh, absolutely. About 5 years ago, we expanded Samanka Place with a new wing, being able to accommodate another 36 ladies. But what we're engaged in right now is just community love from particularly, well, businesses and folks in Kaiser and Salem, building a whole new courtyard in the back. The old one was barren, there was no shade. We had a couple of structures for the kids, but that was pretty much it. Now what's happening is a whole new courtyard is being donated by many of the folks in Salem and Kaiser, and we're hoping to be able to provide a place that's comfortable for the ladies, particularly when it's raining or it's hot and sunny, and being able to play with their kids in the same relative area. So the new courtyard's exciting. I should have brought a picture because we're about halfway through with it. So.
Director Thompson?
I just want to thank you for coming and giving us all this information. It's a very exciting project, and hopefully we'll be included in it some way.
Yeah, I'll come back in a year from now and show you pictures, and it'll be exciting for the Men's Mission and Samanka Place. Again, thank you so much for the support. We just couldn't get around without your help.
I have one question. What's the price tag on the new build?
For the Men's Mission, across from the police department, the total project is $15 million. We've raised close to $9 million, and we're looking for private fundraising about $2.9 million more, and about $3.3 million from market tax credits from affordable housing program, and housing funds from the state. We've been awarded recently $2 million from the Federal Home Loan Bank out of San Francisco in a grant. So we're about still a little over $6 million away, but we're going to.
Yes, Director Thompson.
Would you clarify the match? You said something about a match.
Oh, yeah, thanks for asking. Right now we have a matching campaign, so your $1,000 turns into $2,000 through some generous donors, and we're hoping to wrap that up by May 31st. So we're excited about being able to move forward and get a building permit by the end of August, and start demolishing structures that need to move October 1st.
Any other comments or questions? Well, it's really exciting, and it's going to be, that whole area is redeveloping down there, so thank you for coming and sharing.
Thanks for being a part of it.
Thanks, Dan.
I think I can pull this out. Not do that? The thumb drive? Okay. I don't want to mess it up for the next guy. Thank you.
And now we're ready for public comment. And Linda, do we have people signed up for public comment? And we're going to probably do the same as we did I shouldn't say probably, we're going to do the same as we did last month, and that is we're going to have general public comment, and then we have some people here to testify on the Special Transportation Fund, and we will have you testify prior to the deliberation on that subject. Yes.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Chair. When would be an appropriate time for a motion to draft a letter of support? Would that be now?
I think
Then I'd like to make a motion for a letter of support for the mission project.
okay. Do we
I second that.
moved and seconded? Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. So we will draft a letter of support to the Planning Commission to support the project.
Thank you.
And I have 3 people signed up for public comment. I have Victor Repetto.
Victor Ripto, and I think that would be more appropriate as the testimony we're talking about.
STF.
About STF, okay. And then I have Brent DeMoe, and I believe you're also on, and Jeremy Gordon, also on. Okay, then we will move on to our consent calendar.
I move we adopt the consent calendar.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And now we will move on to our action items, and we're going to bring up the the approval of the STF Advisory Committee recommendations for the Federal Special Transportation Fund and the 5310 ODOT funding. And I'll call on our general manager to introduce it, and then we will have
So we'll
period.
do staff report first.
Yes, and then we'll have,
So we'll do the staff report, and then we'll call up the public comment. So if Ron Harding, the chair of the STF Advisory Committee, and Ted Stonecliffe, the STF administrator, will please come forward.
I'm Ron Harding. I'm the chair of the STF AC Advisory Committee. Special Transportation Fund Advisory Committee met on March 12th, per the board's instructions. At your February 28th board meeting, we have a new recommendation to present to you tonight. But before I do that, Ted Stonecliffe, Cherriots coordinator for the committee, will present some background and findings in this section and memo.
Thank you, Ron. Do I need to press this button?
no,
It's
we
on.
can hear you.
Okay. After the February 28th board meeting, we invited all applicants for the STF and 5310 grants to the next STF Advisory Committee meeting, which was held on Tuesday, March 12th. The board elected to send the committee back into session to clarify the process, investigate the priorities of the coordinated plan, and to provide more time for the process that some felt was rushed. An extension to the application deadline from March 15th to March 29th was granted by ODOT to allow time for this process. At the March 12th meeting, 7 out of our 9 committee members were in attendance, and representatives of Polk County, the City of Woodburn, Cherriots, and Salem Health West Valley Foundation were present at the meeting. There was time for public comment from the applicants and time for the committee members to ask questions of the applicants as they deemed necessary. 3 representatives of the Polk County applications for the Falls City Direct Connect gave public comment in favor of their project. The following is a summary of the events and discussions that led up to the approval of the committee's final recommendation for funding the 2019 to 2021 biennial allocation of STF and 5310 funds for Marion and Polk counties. The committee talked first about the 5310 ODOT applications and proposed a motion that would not change their prior recommendation. This motion passed unanimously, and the discussion moved to the STF applications. Committee members first discussed the priorities of the coordinated plan and agreed that the adopted plan's top priority was to maintain existing services before funding any new services. One member also pointed out that STF-AC members should have paid more attention to the fact that there is a notable shortfall in STF dollars for the upcoming biennium. So no matter what the recommendation is formed, existing services will be cut because there is less money available, especially when inflation is taken into consideration. Chair Ron Harding asked Cherriots staff to provide more specific data to the committee for what cuts would have to be made to the Cherriots regional service if a new project was funded. Staff pointed out that if all existing services were funded at their scaled request levels, there would be $22,282 left over. However, this still represents a cut in service to existing projects. Since the scaled requests are the absolute minimums, the applicants could accept without cutting too much service. Staff then presented two alternatives for the impacts to Cherriots Regional Service in the Falls City Direct Connect project, if the Falls City Direct Connect project was funded. First, if Polk County were to operate the service, and second, if Cherriots were to operate it. Staff showed that if Polk County were to operate the service, the Cherriots Regional Polk County Flex, for example, would have to be cut by an hour and a half per day. But if Cherriots were to operate it, the cut would be 3 hours, 45 minutes per day. At that point, a motion was made to fund all existing services at their scaled requests and fund the Polk County project, the Falls City Direct Connect, with the $22,282. Discussion that followed included an objection to the idea of funding a new service, which would mean further cuts to an existing service, which goes against the guidance of the coordinated plan. The scaled requests do not suggest that the applicants would find a way to continue to provide the same level of service that they are currently providing, as confirmed by a question to the City of Woodburn representatives. So the question is whether that remaining amount would be best applied to the Falls City Direct Connect or to bring the existing services closer to their full ask. With further discussion, a final motion was created to distribute the remaining $22,282 among the existing services in proportion to their scaled request amounts as they relate to the total allocation. The motion was passed 5 yes to 2 no, and the board is advised that the dissension amongst committee members was present. The final decision is left to the STF agency, which ultimately will direct the general manager to submit applications to ODOT for funding by the March 29 deadline. Now Ron Harding, our chair, will present the official recommendation of the committee.
Our committee, the STF Advisory Committee, recommends that the 2019-21 biennium STF and 5310 ODOT grant application be approved as shown in attachment A. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions from the board.
Do we have any questions from the board? Director Thompson?
I have one. Do we have any idea what this 1.5 hours a day, how many passengers we're talking about? How many people won't be able to ride?
So we looked at just the average riders per hour. Just in the last 6 months of service, it averages about 3.5 riders per hour. So per year, we were looking at about, I believe the number was around 1,000 per year.
Thank you.
And I think one of the things that we asked members, or at least I asked members to do, was not simply to make a motion, but to provide some background as to how that motion provides justification for the decision. And it was difficult for us to find a justification to cut an existing service by 1.5 hours, really in any route, to fund a new service. And I think that's really what it kind of came down to. That's my opinion of the discussion.
Director Evans?
My question is, the impact is to the flex route, and that's Independence, Monmouth, Dallas?
That's correct.
Yeah, and is that like number 4 or which?
So currently the service runs in those 3 cities from 7 to 5:15 p.m.
Yeah.
So if we were to provide service, or if Polk County were to provide the service, and we spent that $22,000 on the service, that would take an 1.5 hours away from the Polk County Flex every day. So maybe 7 o'clock to 4 o'clock or 3:45.
Yeah. The value is the beginning and the ending times. There's time in the middle where there's nobody on the bus.
Actually, we have a high ridership in the middle of the day because,
In the afternoon?
yeah, right now, we're looking at redesigning the service so that we can really grow the ridership. So there really isn't room to have sections of the day that would be without service.
Yeah, you can't very well take the bus off the road for an hour and a half and then put it back on.
You can, but it's hard to communicate to people, and
Yeah.
it doesn't make the service as useful.
And I think that kind of goes beyond the scope of the committee's work to try to redesign existing service around grant
I
applications.
wasn't asking you to. I'm just looking at the consequences. Where else does that funding, is there any other use for that funding? I mean, Red Line, Shopper Shuttle, is that funding in there for that?
Right, so the Cherriots application is for the regional service, preventive maintenance of the regional service, but also what we call purchase service for Shop and Ride and Cherriots Lift.
Yeah, and Cherry Lift?
Yes.
So the Red Line, is that a regional service?
No, that's an urban service.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
So let's make sure, so the Red Line and Shop and Ride are the same thing. We're phasing the name, Red, yeah.
Yeah. Can those be backfilled in any other source?
Well, the Shop and Ride and the Cherriots Lift are funded through multiple sources. One of them is the STF. The regional service is funded through the STF, the 5310 and 5311.
Right.
So when you're packaging the urban services, you're looking at multiple streams to flow. You cannot use the local urban general fund to help offset costs in the regional service.
I understand that. But don't we fund the Red Line with other sources?
Yes.
So what would be the significance of taking off the Red Line from that funding source?
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, you're saying the Red Line is part of that funding that's coming from the STF.
Right.
What would be the impact on us, urban, to take that source of funds, STF funds, from the Red Line away? Where would the
And
money
move
come
it,
from?
and move it to the regional?
No, take it away from the regional, because aren't we getting some of the STF funds?
Right.
Well, it's in a package, true?
Correct.
I was looking at creative ways of doing
Well,
this.
okay, I think I understand. So what happens then is you're building your urban services. If you reduce the STF, what you then are going to, what you're saying is reduce urban services or use more general fund for those urban services, which ultimately takes away from Chariot service.
Right. How are we able
Instead of using that money, and what you're doing is moving urban money, you're moving urban money from Chariots into the Shop and Ride or Chariots Lift to offset the loss of your regional service.
That's right.
Yes. That is possible, but just understand if you do that, then you're cutting urban services to fund, basically, to fund new rural services.
I'm not saying cut them, I'm saying backfill the urban with another source of funds.
But those other sources of funds are going to other programs, so you're going to move it from one program to the other. So it's which program do you want to reduce service?
Got it. With the new STIF money that's coming out, is there any requirement that we provide for low income, or it has to be urban? Can it be rural?
No, there's a significant chunk of STIF money going to the rural services. But you
Already?
cannot use the STIF money to replace existing
Backfill,
service.
yeah, I know
It's
that.
to enhance existing levels of service.
Enhance existing service?
Yes.
Would the Falls City be an enhancement?
Enhancement to, yes,
Yes.
yes.
Could that be an avenue, perhaps not at this moment?
Sure.
And-
then
And who
when
would make
there's-
that decision?
The board makes that decision. I think
Okay.
Mr. Kelly has a question.
I'm just looking at trying to find creative ways to assist if we can't get there the regular route. You know what I'm saying?
Director Kelly?
From the perspective of having been on the board for a long time and running into shortfalls in other services and backfilling, it sort of starts multiplying issues. One of the things is the STF money comes to the urban area for as a population thing, and it comes to the other areas as a population, the regional stuff based on a population. And so if we start spending urban STF money in the regional service, then we either don't do that service because we can't backfill it with the new STIF money. So it starts going down a pathway that gets us into problems because we've done that before. I can't remember whether, I know you were not on the board. I can't remember whether Jerry was on the board when we did it. One of the things that I've committed to is trying to work with Polk County Commissioner in some creative things to do. I don't know whether they realize that that government entities are, if you donate to a government entity, it's tax deductible. And I would think that if you looked through, might be able to find some entities, some foundations that actually do some funding that don't require you to be a 501c3. It would probably need to be done at the Polk County level because I don't think Falls City is big enough to have that sort of expertise. But being creative, maybe looking towards somebody at Western Oregon who has grant writing, that might be a possibility to look for some of those things like that. But I really don't think we should get into a situation where we're taking away from services to seniors and people with disabilities, such as the shopper shuttle or red line or whatever we're calling it now, because it starts setting a bad precedent. I think unfortunately this came all sort of right at the very last, and maybe a bit earlier, we might have been able to be a little bit more creative, but I think that we need to just keep thinking of creative ways of trying to help the Polk County, Falls City, Polk County connect, but not delve into financing that otherwise could be a problem. We are still, as far as I know, not assured that we have, do we know about the appropriation or?
We won't know
Until June.
the last day of the session.
Okay.
Other comments from board members?
Get the public comment.
We need to have.
Well, and I thank both Ted and Rick for leading this, and I know it's been a little more controversial this year, and so thank you for taking the heat on that. And so if there's no more questions, we'll start our public comment session then. And public comment is limited to 3 minutes, and Linda is our timekeeper, And when she signals, then that is the time limit. So I'll call on Mr. Repito? Repito, okay.
My name is Victor Repito. I live in Turner. I'm a member of the disabled community that we were concerned with, and I really appreciate the efforts that you're putting in tonight to make sure that those services aren't cut. I'm a member of the STF Advisory Committee, and when we first voted on this measure for approving these funds, we voted to appropriate something along the lines of $50,000 to the Falls City project to help them continue funding a van that was taking people to and from Falls City and Dallas. Staff didn't like that decision. They came back to us and said the strategic plan doesn't allow for us to fund new services before we fund existing services. The Falls City Connect is not a new service. It's an existing service. It was funded originally at least 1 year ago. If we start saying that we're going to take money, we're only going to give money to existing services in Woodburn and Salem, and not existing services in Polk County, then Woodburn and Salem are always going to win. It's my understanding that this STFAC was formed in order to moderate the equitability of these decisions regarding these funds. There's over 500,000 going to Woodburn. There's almost 1.5 million going to Cherriots. We're asking for $50,000 for this program Polk County is asking for $50,000 for this program to maintain this van that's going to and from Falls City and Dallas. And as I interpret this, I've looked at the things that I asked staff, where does it say in here that we can't fund that program? And they pointed to specific areas on pages 59 and 61. And none of those chapters preclude us from funding that program. And this has been used repeatedly to justify rewriting this decision that we originally made to fund this program. It was a reasonable request to begin with, and it wasn't hard to make, even though the amount of time we were given to do so was very short. And even though the decision went the way I thought it should, I was still one of the people that objected to the fact that we didn't have enough time to discuss it. My advocacy since then has resulted in threats from staff to have me removed from the STFAC. So I'm going to leave that for a future conversation, but I would appreciate an opportunity to come back and respond before any such action is taken. I have a lot more to say, but I hear my time is up. So
Okay, thank you for being
Do you have anything
brief.
else to say?
I do have.
That's a
quite bit.
question.
The email I received from staff told me I needed to come meet with them in private and discuss these issues. And when I said, no, this is committee business, we should speak about it at the committee, then it was followed up with an email that told me it was inappropriate for me to advocate for another program to apply for funds because I might receive some benefit from it. Well, it was just a discussion with a local volunteer organization to try to get some used mobility devices to people that are disabled and need them. And I might have, sometime in the future, possibly gotten a mobility chair of my own, according to them. except I already have one. So, except I don't use a mobility chair, I use an electric bicycle, which I've been kicked off the bus like 3 times now, before we finally said, you know, yes, electric bicycles are allowed on the bus. There was also an accusation that I had done something inappropriate in the past, but it wasn't specific, and I don't really know what else to say about that. Anyway, that's about, I think I covered just about everything there.
So what action are you recommending?
I don't know what to tell you to do. What I would like to see is something I'm not sure is possible. After listening to Mrs. Kelly, I'm not sure that the decision that's been made so far is completely wrong. But what I would do is go back to the original decision that was made originally and give Polk County the funds they need to run that Falls City route. And I would ask them also to do something innovative, like turn the seats in the van sideways so that everybody's facing each other, and make them so that they fold up so that people can bring bicycles and mobility devices on there if there's nobody else in those seats. Because I think that would significantly increase the ridership on that route. I think we could do the same thing here in Salem, instead of arguing about the few spaces that are on the front or the back of the bus.
Yeah. Thank you.
Eugene is already doing it.
Yeah, thank you for your insight. Appreciate your coming.
Dr. Thompson?
Yeah, Victor, you know, that information might have been helpful at the last STF meeting that you did not attend.
You're correct. Yes, I do have disabilities that prevented me from attending that meeting.
But that would have been a good
But I had
discussion.
already received the threats by that time, so. And the vote was 5-2, so my vote wouldn't have made a difference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll call on Mr. DeMoe. And all of the board members have received your letters, so just, and some of us has shared it to make.
Tell me your favorite
A couple
parts.
of times.
For the record, I'm Brent DeMoe. I work in Polk County in the Family and Community Outreach Department. I live in Dallas, Oregon. I'm glad that you guys did receive that letter. I'm not going to go over every part of it, but I do want to make a few clarifying comments to you guys. The first one that I want to make is on the first page of my letter, when at the last advisory committee meeting, when staff were asked to come up with creative ideas for how to potentially fund the Falls City Direct Connect project, the only creative solution that was given was to cut another Polk County program. When I asked at that meeting, why are you only considering cutting another Polk County program, staff said in the meeting, because that's what the general manager told them to do. If you're looking for a creative solution, that's on the record. That happened in the meeting. There were board meetings that were there. Board members, you were there too. So the only alternative that was given was to cut another Polk County program, not any other program within Marion and Polk County. So that felt a little bit cutting to us. But at the same time, the flex route, being a Polk County resident and an employee at the county for 11 years, cutting 1.5 hours in trade for providing all the transportation from Falls City to Dallas, we were very happy with that idea. Staff also reported that 90% of the ridership for that particular route is to get employees from Garton and Goodwill to their programs. It's not the public that is utilizing that. 90% of it are just 2 agencies. The regional route is the one that we wouldn't want to see any cuts to. We really like that one. So there's $22,282 left over that was up for discussion. What do we do with that money? When the motion was made to partially fund the Falls City project with that money, we were elated, and we shared that with the committee. We would find a way, we would be committed to find a way to fund the rest of the program. Procedurally, it was very strange. Following Robert's rules, I've done this for a long time, to have a motion, to have a second, and then in the middle of that motion to change everything. Procedurally, that was really a strange thing to do. It's something I would recommend that you have training in your advisory committees in the future on how to follow just the basics of Robert's rules. But the decision to take that $22,000 and then just divide it up evenly among the other 4 or 5 funded entities, giving them a little boost of about $4,000 or $5,000 each, when that would have sparked us to find a way to fully fund the Fall City program, we would have found a way to do it, at least through the end of 2019. It was just bizarre that that was the decision that was made. So it was also mentioned right in the middle of that motion, somebody on the committee said, our bylaws tell us that we have to only fund existing programs. And then there was discussion for 5 or 6 minutes, does the committee have bylaws? And Mr. Bullock said that there are no bylaws for the committee. And I've never seen any bylaws for that committee.
That is not
That's
correct.
not true.
Which part isn't true?
We have bylaws.
Okay,
They were
where,
just adopted in December.
okay. I haven't seen any bylaws, and several committee members haven't seen bylaws. And the bylaws,
No, they work together to make them up. They're the ones that first saw the bylaws and did the adjusting to it that we adopted.
okay. So
Discussed them in November. Excuse me, they discussed them in November and we approved them in December.
Gotcha. So according to ODOT's guidelines, I'm curious if your bylaws, this is what they ask. Bylaws defining the roles, responsibilities, and committee procedures are required.
Absolutely.
Adopted bylaws will guide the advisory committee in its actions and deliberations and will make it easier for the public to understand the committee's responsibilities. The bylaws should define the membership of the committee, terms of office, the meeting schedule, and these are the last 2 important parts. How the committee makes decisions and other committee procedures. Every time I've come before you in every meeting I've attended, your own staff and committee members have said it's a confusing, they don't know, the definitions are made up or readjusted halfway through. When you talk about things like rank order doesn't matter in how the grants were graded, but in your coordinated plan where there is no rank order, you have decided that there is rank order by ranking it yourselves. So very, very confusing to say the least on trying to just follow a process. The other attachment I emailed you guys gives you a proposal to where if you just fund all of the other projects at 99% of their scaled down funding, it would free up $41,926 for Fall City Direct Connect. That would be only 39% of our scaled down proposal. But if you did what the committee recommended when the motion was made and funded all of those programs at 100% of their scaled down version, it would free up that $22,282 to at least partially fund the Fall City project. And we would be more than happy with any amount that you could do that. Between the city of Fall City and Polk County, we'll find a way to do the rest. When I attended your guys' work session, we weren't allowed to give any testimony at all, but one of the things that several of the board members said was that Polk County needs to step up and be a part of this. By the time June 30th comes, we will have funded nearly $20,000 cash out of our budget already. The funding ran out for FCDC in November. I've covered it November, December, January, February, March, $2,200 a month. We're committed to fund it all the way through June. When comments have been made about maybe Brent should write some grants, y'all, I'm a professional grant writer. 7 years, $6 million in cash I brought to Polk County, just my department. I apply for grants every week. The most appropriate grant to apply for in Polk County for transportation is yours. That's why we applied for it. That's why we went for it. We apply for, comments were made, we should ask Walmart. They do $500 a year. We get that every single year. Comments were made to apply for Fred Meyer. Fred Meyer doesn't fund this, it's corporate. Same with Safeway. Same with the Dallas grocery outlet. If there's a grant out there, we get it. We just received $35,000 this week from Willamette University. We received $38,000 the week before from Spirit Mountain. We know how to write grants. We squeeze every turnip, every rock, whatever that analogy is, apply it right here. We squeeze things. So to me, it's less about the decision that was made, and it was more about a very confusing process that not only didn't make sense for some of the committee members, if you heard, and Victor wasn't the only one, there were others that didn't understand the process. And it seemed like it was very confusing. How do you come to a decision? When can proposals be brought in mid, or it didn't make much sense. And that's my biggest appeal to y'all. we would be very happy with any of the funding that you have to help us fund this much-needed transportation program. I know I went past 3 minutes. I really appreciate you guys giving me a little bit more time. I'm happy to answer any questions. You have my email and also the chart that we put together with some funding ideas. Thank you.
Director Kelly?
I think I was speaking more directly to Falls City, not probably having the capability. I did not know that you did a lot of grant writing. I was just trying to think outside the box for
Roger.
more help. But it was more the fact that I know that as a very small city, Falls City probably doesn't have the bandwidth to be able to look around for grants. And so it was not intended.
I'll let the
as a-
mayor address that, but you might be surprised because they actually have been doing pretty amazing at writing some grants, even recently. But it was the county that submitted this grant in a partnership, and we do know how to write grants. In my department, we're super successful. We're in the 99% rate for grants that we've written and received funding for.
Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the next person is Jeremy Gordon. And
Well, good evening, President Krebs and members of the board. Again, my name is Jeremy Gordon. I'm the mayor of Falls City. And we do write grants. We have a CDBG grant right now to fund engineering for our new wastewater system. Our infrastructure is really our main focus right now, just to keep the water running and everything flowing. So on top of that, I'm working on sort of projects that do help add to the services in Falls City, such as this. I just want to say you'll be happy to know that I'm feeling a bit more calm than the last time I was here. You might say I'm feeling a bit exhausted. Not just because of this process. I have a 2-year-old who's been very sick the past week and I haven't slept much. But anyway, I'm here to speak again on behalf of the Falls City Direct Connect Transportation Program and to ask that you amend the Special Transportation Fund Advisory Committee's recommendation slightly to direct a portion of STF dollars toward this robust and innovative partnership. I'm here again to ask this board, the final arbiters of the allocation of STF funds, it's merely a recommendation from the STF Advisory Committee, to partner with Polk County and Falls City to help us continue life-saving transportation services to the disabled, poor, and seniors of Falls City. I just want to make one side comment. President Krebs, you mentioned that there are a lot of rural communities that need transportation, and we can't possibly help them all, and I agree with that, and I took that to heart. And I just want to say that we are the ones at the table formed a partnership, formed a service that worked really well and works really well. And I would love to be part of any sort of rural committee to help other communities innovate in similar ways. But that aside, the STF process has been equal parts confusing, illegible, and contradictory, and I appreciate your commitment to making it less so for future partners and applicants. To this end, the board asked the STF Advisory Committee to reconvene in order to clarify their process, recommit themselves to the coordinated plan as written, and consider finding a creative solution to work with us. And I appreciate the board's contributions to that process. Unfortunately, as evidenced by the meeting on March 12th, during which I was present along with Commissioner Modhorst and Brent DeMoe, your direction was not heeded, in my opinion. During that March 12th meeting, the committee was not asked to vote on a seconded motion to fund the Falls City Direct Connect at that $22,000 level, which still would have allowed existing programs 100% of their scaled request. Instead, in a very curious twist of Robert's Rules of Order that Brent alluded to, an amendment was proposed and seconded to do just the opposite, to not fund the Falls City Direct Connect at all. I am a rookie mayor, and even I know that a seconded motion must be voted on, even if there is an amendment to the original motion. And that amended motion, again, was based on bylaws. I'm not sure your bylaws state that only existing programs can be funded, nor the coordinated plan necessarily, if you read it as written. The coordinated plan, as I mentioned, has essentially been narrowed and limited to only include funding for existing SKT services, and the majority of other priorities are to be ignored. I'm not really sure how the ranking goes. Would that mean that the first condition, that existing services must be met, and if you can move on, you go to the second? If those two can be met, you go on to the third? I'm not sure that's clear to anybody. If we had known that the coordinated plan was going to be interpreted in this very narrow, incomplete way, If I had known this when Craig Pope, Brent DeMoe, Jessica Madronal, and I met with Cherriots staff, and I won't name names, to discuss our shoestring but innovative transportation program and to see if STF funds were appropriate to pursue, we likely would have elected not to apply and wasted our time. But instead, we were encouraged, actually. We were told that Cherriots was looking for partners and existing, especially partners who, through innovation and real ground level community planning, ran a successful transportation service so efficiently and at such a low cost. We actually should have been discouraged from applying, and the Technical Advisory Committee, of which most members are made up of STFAC members, should never have recommended funding. But when we presented, it was a really exciting conversation, and it seemed like we were in line with the STF, the intent of the STF funds. But I don't think, at least I hope, that this board wants to narrow the coordinated plan to such a stifling degree. That's why I'm asking that you discuss and motion to adopt one of the 2 new proposals presented by Polk County in lieu of the STFAC recommendation. When I meet with other mayors in the Oregon Mayors Association, and they advise me to work with Cherriots when I describe our transportation problems, Cherriots is the only approved agency that can allocate these funds. And I wanted to talk about how this successful partnership flourished, rather than this convoluted, confusing process. And when I speak with riders, more importantly, who need this program for basic life-sustaining services, I want to tell them the same. And that's all I have. Thanks for your time.
Do you have any questions for the mayor? Well, thank you very much. At this time, is there any discussion from the board members on this
Yeah, I was
issue?
going to ask, am I turned on? What's our process then? Is it discussion time? Is that what you're saying?
Did we get a?
We can
We want a
have a
motion,
motion, and then we
discussion.
can discuss the motion. So, no, there is a motion on page 42.
Doug has a question.
Doug?
Hi. Well, I'm looking at this chart here we have on page 43, and it talks about new service and existing service with little check marks. And it says the Falls City Direct Connect is a new service, but as I understood it, it was existing service, so how did it get marked as a new service?
Sure.
And so
It may be an existing service, but it's a new service to these funding sources. So it's never been funded by these sources. So that's the difference.
So that's how it's
That's how existing and new is
defined, isn't
determined.
it?
Yes, Director Bush.
Well, I don't know if this is the right time to do this, but I wanted to do some clarification, I think, as far as the coordinated plan. I spent most of the day studying this, and this is some comments I really wanted to share. It was updated in 2016, and the plan itself is a discussion of the process on pages 59 to 61, which was alluded to earlier. But on page 59, and I have printed copies of it right here, the existing 2009 coordinated plan identifies a set of priorities used to weight the selection of transportation strategies and funding decisions. The 5 priorities were, in descending order of importance: 1, maintain current public transportation service in rural and Marion and Polk counties. 2, maintain current Monday through Friday service in the urban area. 3, add additional hours to the current transportation service in rural Marion and Polk counties. 4, maintain current shopper shuttles in the urban area. And 5, provide medical transportation for non-Medicaid people in rural Marion and Polk counties. Then it talks about the stakeholder workshops that happened next. And that was in 16. Participants were asked to comment on a set of priorities based partially on the previous list, along with additional priorities. When presented to project stakeholders during the 4 workshops, there was general agreement that the following 7 priorities should be included as part of the updated coordinated plan. And they were to guide the decisions to implement the plan, including how to evaluate funding applications. And I think we keep focusing on these 7 that were suggested to be priorities. Maintain, improve, expand existing services, increase capacity hours, improve service quality, avoid service reductions in both urban and rural areas. And these are only bullet pointed, there's no numbers. Provide for adequate capital replacements and maintenance of vehicles and other fundamental requirements to provide service. Consider providing non-emergency medical transportation for non-Medicaid people in rural Marion, Polk counties, page 60. Consider cost effectiveness in making funding decisions, but balance that with the need to provide accessibility throughout Marion and Polk counties. Develop policies that identify a target for distribution of funds on strategic and equitable basis to address the needs of the region's seniors and people with disabilities. Implement new and innovative initiatives related to technology and collaborative partnerships to improve service to underserved communities and people. And then the last one, enhance rider experience and sense of dignity by being sensitive and attentive to the various needs of people and by emphasizing a customer service model. Sorry I'm taking so long, but I wanted to read it so everybody has the information. So in the previous plan, 3 of the 5 identified priorities sought to maintain the existing 2009 level of trans service provided by Salem Kaiser Transit, and all 5 priorities specifically concerned an aspect of transit service levels. The new list of priorities combines the previous 5 priorities into 2 items. Because of the multifaceted and complex nature of providing transit service for seniors and people with disabilities, the updated set of priorities takes a comprehensive approach in expressing that reality. Striving for equitable investment and funding decisions while maintaining a cost-effective operation will allow Salem Kaiser Transit to provide greater amounts of transit service to those in need, and setting a priority that demands an exploration of innovative ideas and technologies will allow Salem Kaiser Transit to keep up with the growth in the senior and disabled populations. And then it goes into the strategies. So the first strategy there is to sustain current service levels. And then as funding allows, continue implementation of phase 2 of the moving forward plan, which is our Saturday service, et cetera. And then there's a whole nother list on page 61. So when we keep talking about the coordinated plan, I felt like we kept going back to 2009's and what was suggested to be. We did get all the way to what the other one was. So that's my main comment. For information.
Director Kelly? Oh, Director Kelly.
Alan, if we chose to use some of the money and take one of the suggestions that Mr. Dumo or Brent has given us, what kind of regulations would need to happen for someone to use that money?
I'm not quite sure.
What kind of things would someone have to do to use the money? They have to follow federal guidelines because part of it's federal, parts of it's state?
No, this is an allocation of STF, so they have to follow the STF and the state guidelines.
And
So-
what kinds of regulations regarding STF?
She just read.
They just need to be a public transportation provider. I mean, they could provide that service. That's how they're doing it. I think if you're asking, do they need to adhere to the federal drug and alcohol? No.
They don't.
No. Right?
We don't have any requirements on the state to maintain?
No.
Okay.
Director Thompson?
Yeah, just to remind the board, there's some comment about maybe taking money away from Marion County. For several years now, and I think maybe forever, we've tried to balance the money and transportation in each county based on the population and other things. I know Polk County gets more than their share at this time anyway. And to take money away from Marion County to do something in Polk County I think would not be appropriate for this board. We always have trouble getting members of the SDF committee, and we have to beg and borrow and find people that are willing to serve. And we try to keep that balanced also with enough Polk County representatives and Marion counties to balance it out. And that just for information and reminder for the board.
I in fact had that same question about the balance of what of what we're funding, so since you brought it up, I will give you the exact figures. The STF money is allocated according to counties, and then we sort of try to make sure that we allocate the urban versus the rural population. But Marion County gets 50% of the service hours, Polk County gets 43, and this is money that's allocated according to population, and Polk County has 20% of the population, and Marion County has 80%. So I do agree that taking away, and it was one of the things that I wanted to find out a couple of weeks ago or so. I had this before the area commission meeting so that we had some questions. Because I wanted to make sure that we were not shorting Polk County on service hours. And I didn't think we were, but I did verify this according to the latest 2017 population.
And one other thing is that this whole process is governed by ODOT, and we just go along with their rules and regulations.
Yes, Director Lincoln.
Yes, that's another reason to back up Colleen's point about the coordinated plan. The coordinated plan was developed pursuant to administrative rules, which are developed according to the Oregon statute. And the administrative rules actually set out the priority for funds. And the first one is maintenance of existing transportation programs and services for the elderly and people with disabilities. And second is expansion of such programs and services. And then creation is the third, after you've maintained your existing programs or expanded it. So it's not just a local plan. This is governed by state laws and regulations. So we need to think seriously with a limited amount of money how we're going to allocate those funds.
Any other comments or questions? Would someone like to make a motion?
Can do it.
Director Thompson.
I move the board approve the STF Advisory Committee's recommendation for funding the 2019 to 2021 biennium STF and 5310, which is in parentheses ODOT, grant applications as shown in attachment A, and authorize the general manager to submit the applications in advance of ODOT's March 29th, 19 deadline.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any discussion? Director Lincoln.
I would like to say, since I was the one who kind of brought this up at the last meeting, that I really appreciate the staff and the committees getting together again and going over this. And I hope that things maybe, doesn't sound like it got more transparent, but I think the process was followed and everyone came in with knowing where they wanted to go, and I think the majority made the right decision, and I'm going to support that.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Then ready for the vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Aye.
One opposed.
Two.
Opposed. So motion carried. 3 opposed?
No.
Okay.
I have a question.
2 opposed.
I have a
You have a
comment.
question.
Just
Yes.
a comment.
Okay.
And the comment is, occasionally we get extra money as we go along through the year. And I don't know if that's something that might happen this time, but if it does, and we have an opportunity to maybe allocate it, or the STF committee would have an opportunity to do that, perhaps we could consider something later on.
I would agree with that, and I think most of the board would. And I'm sorry that it happens that way, but we, as an agency, put in for grants too with the federal government, and we get turned down too, and it's just limited funds, and it's, we would hope that maybe somewhere down the line we will have an opportunity that we can help you with this. So we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is H1, which is adoption Resolution 2019-03 for qualified entries, approval of the statewide transportation improvement fund formula plan. And I'll call on the general
Yes,
manager.
let me ask Ted Stonecliffe to please come back up and present the staff report.
President Krebs and members of the board, staff is asking the board tonight to adopt Resolution 2019-03 to accept the revised Salem Area Mass Transit District application for the 2019 to 2021 Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund, or STIF, formula funds. The district is the qualified entity for the disbursement of STIF funds in Marion and Polk counties. The Board of Directors adopted the STIF plan application at the October 25th, 2018 board meeting at the recommendation of the STIF Advisory Committee. And the district submitted the application to ODOT on November 1st, 2018. During ODOT's review process, substantive revisions were required in the STIF plan application that now necessitates documented QE approval no later than April 15th, 2019, to enable action by the Oregon Transportation Commission and for subsequent disbursement of formula funds by ODOT in early May. We provided a table on pages 37 and 38 of the packet that contains a list of the revisions we have made. The revised STIF plan will become the binding agreement between ODOT, SAMTED, the City of Woodburn, and the City of Silverton. And just I'll highlight one example of a change required. The second row of Table 1 on page 37, the original application selected the administrative category as a task to hire new drivers to provide Saturday service beginning in September 2019. The comment that ODOT made was that the category should be operations for money that funds drivers or any function of delivering service. So staff have made this change to the revised application.
Which number is that?
Pardon me?
What number is that?
611.
611.
Yes. So at this time, I would like, staff recommends that board adopt Resolution 2019-03, accepting the changes made to the STIF plan application submitted to ODOT for the 2019 to 2021 biennium STIF formula grant funds. And I can answer any questions that you have.
Director Evans, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, Director Bush.
My question has to do with the projects 1 through 11 on the last page, 38, when allowing for student transit.
Yes.
I was just curious as to our change in our summer pass program starting in June, how that
Right.
coordinates with this.
Yes, due to the youth fair that we've established that will start on June 3rd, essentially, as you see in the right-hand column there, it says that we're providing more than the required minimum, 2.44% and 2.24%. So their comment was mainly for fiscal year 2019. We had not indicated any benefit in fiscal year 2019, but we're not.
Because June is still 2018.
Right.
Okay.
So we made that clarification.
Fiscal year 2019?
Yeah, this is fiscal year
Because
2019.
we're not operating.
We're not doing any service enhancements until the next fiscal year 20.
So when does our fiscal year start?
July 1st.
And our student bus starts in June.
It starts in June, right?
Is that an overlap? That's where I'm confused.
Yeah, I guess technically there would be some benefit in fiscal year 19 provided there. We could make that revision to show a small benefit there. That's a good point.
Okay, now I know I'm on the right track.
Okay.
So is that something that we should do, or? Would that help with our application? Is that what the problem is?
No,
No?
no, it's already been approved.
That's already-
This is
okay.
just administrative housekeeping.
Okay.
That's true.
Let's keep house in a good way.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Are we ready for a motion?
I move that the board adopt resolution number 2019-03 to amend resolution number 2018-09 and accept the revisions made in the STIF plan application for 2019 through 21 biennium STIF formula grant funds, and direct the general manager to submit the amending resolution in advance of ODOT's April 15th, 2019 deadline.
Second.
Moved and second. Any comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and motion carries. And we have one additional item on the purchase of new buses. We have
Yes, I'd ask Greg Thompson, maintenance manager, to come up and present the report.
We have an extra sheet that you received with your,
It should have been at your table.
We did a few trees tonight.
yes.
President Krebs and members of the board, good evening. I'm sorry that you guys got the memo before you so late. One of the steps for a proper procurement is ensuring that the Buy America qualifications are complete. There's ever-increasing stipulations for that, and we just recently received the certification for that, which kind of gave us that next step, and here we are. So the issue before you tonight is asking for the general manager to enter into an execute a contract with Gillig for the purchase of 9 fixed route buses that are compressed natural gas for the Cherriots fixed route service for an amount not to exceed $9,967,180.
9 million or 4 million?
What?
9 million or 4 million?
I'm sorry, 4,906, little snafu there. $9,467,180. SAMTD's current fleet for delivery of the fixed route service consists of 64 ADA lift-equipped vehicles. Regular replacement of these vehicles is necessary to ensure a safe, efficient delivery of this service. As part of the district's overall capital planning efforts, SAMTD staff is committed to ensuring our vehicles are replaced at a schedule consistent with industry best practices. The 9 vehicles scheduled to be replaced are approaching 17 years of age, which far exceed the 12-year useful life benchmark set by the Federal Transit Administration, as well as the 15-year useful life benchmark set in SAMTD's Transit Asset Management, or TAM plan. And what that is we recognize that 12 years is the recommended minimum useful life, and we feel confident that we can efficiently keep those buses for the longer period of time. The contract price is based upon Washington State's price agreement, procured under procedures set by the Washington Department of Transportation's Public Transit Division. The order will be for 9 40-foot compressed natural gas CNG vehicles. 7 of those vehicles will be for regular fixed route service, and 2 of the vehicles are commuter-style vehicles that will primarily be used for the 1X service. The pricing is in the table below, coming forward. For clarification, when we say a commuter-style bus, what that means is that it has the extra comfortable seats with the extra padding that they recline, and they have built-in luggage racks, and they're pretty set up for the longer distance time. The 40-foot CNG buses for the regular fixed route service have a singular price of $549,578, while the commuter style buses have a price of $560,067 each. Funding for this proposed contract in the amount of $4,967,180 is included in the fiscal year 2018-19 adopted budget in the Capital Projects Fund. This project is funded by 2 federal grants with local match
and the activities of this contract are covered in the grant agreements. It is the staff's recommendation that the board authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Gillig for the purchase of, of 9 fixed route compressed natural gas vehicles for Cherriots fixed route service for a not to exceed amount of $4,967,180.
Director Kelly?
I move that the board authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Gillig LLC for the purchase of 9 fixed-route compressed natural gas transit vehicles for Cherriots fixed route service for a not-to-exceed amount of $4,967,180.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion? Director Bush?
I have 2 questions. One, when will they be delivered?
These will actually come pretty quick. We've built a good relationship over the years with Gillig. We're expecting the delivery of these in August of this year, which is kind of unheard of. They typically have a return time of 20 to 24 months, so we're pretty fortunate.
That's great.
And just kind of an added side note, the last buses that the board approved actually started arriving this week, so that's exciting.
We're getting more in blue-white.
Yes, yes,
they
look good.
Changing from red to blue, huh?
Yeah.
I have another question. You mentioned that project is funded by 2 federal grants with local match. How much is our match? Oh, sorry.
That was my question too, so we're good.
It's about $100,000. 20%?
It's 20% of the.
$5 million.
307.
Okay.
The other grant is a 5339 flex through ODOT, so it has a lower 10.27% match. I don't know the exact dollar.
I'll include it in my weekly report tomorrow.
Okay,
Oh, great. Thank you. Good.
Thank you.
Director Thompson?
I'm just curious, how many miles does the present CNG commuter buses have? Do you have any idea?
Last check, they're pushing about 800,000 miles. We're right in that neighborhood. The 2 benchmarks that they go by for the recommended minimum useful life is 12 years and 500,000 miles. So they've exceeded by miles as well.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, Director Kelly?
We thank our mechanics.
They do outstanding work.
We do thank our mechanics and pass those thanks along because we have traditionally had good mechanics who've been able to keep our buses longer. And since we are a less robust organization because of our local funding than, say, TriMet or Lane County, everything that they do helps when we can keep buses running in good shape longer.
Thank you.
And we thank our drivers for being safe.
Absolutely.
Other questions? We're ready for a vote? Are we all ready?
No, we just had a first and a second.
Okay, we need a first and a second.
No.
We've had that, so
We
we're
had
ready
that.
for a
We had
vote. Yes, I thought
discussion.
we
Now
had
vote.
first and second. Okay, we just had so much discussion, we usually don't have so much. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And I had one item that I wanted to throw on here, and hopefully it'll be quick. And thank you very much for your presentation. At the work session, we just talked about the development out at the Mill Creek Industrial Site and how many jobs are going out there. And I did a little research, and I found that if you live in South Salem, where they're building a lot of multifamily housing, it takes you like an hour and 40 minutes on our bus to go from like Kubler and Commercial to the Amazon area. And so I suggested that we, and I've talked to Ellen about this, that we ask staff to look into possibly putting some sort of express bus on Kubler to run across to connect the routes in South Salem and Southeast Salem to that site, and also connecting with the number 11, so it gives people a faster route to a lot of places. And so I gave you this little motion. If somebody is interested, we can put it on we can vote on it, or we can table it. So can I, as a chair, make a motion?
Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll make the motion. I move that,
No.
No, I didn't think the chair could make a motion.
I move that we ask staff to price out,
Oh, here.
there it is, direct staff to evaluate an express bus route on Cooper Boulevard to connect with Route 6, 8, 18, and 21 near Commercial Street Southeast and Route 11 near Romsville Highway, and report back at the July 2019 board meeting. The
Second.
report. Okay.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. Thank you. And we'll go on to, I don't think we have any informational items, so we'll go on to the general manager's report.
Thank you. Just a couple items to report. So you'll see at your stations this month's information notes to help you in you're talking with the community. And also we've put out our newest brochure. This is the brochure we use by our procurement department. Good example is last week they were at the Governor's Marketplace to let businesses know we're available for business, and so this is one of the promotional brochures that they use. So thought we'd like to have one to see what we're working on. I'll just make a few comments on at the legislative conference, because I know Director Krebs and Director Rogers will make comments, but I will say we had good visits with our delegation staff members. The House and Senate were not in session, so the electeds were not there, but we had good meetings with staff as well as the FTA and the House T&I committee professional staff. Your board reps did a good job in advocating along with CFM, and they'll talk about that experience in a minute. At the conference, the FTA also announced that the 5339 discretionary grants will be released in a couple of weeks, which was last week, so we're expecting it in the next week or so. And these are the discretionary grants that you, in your January's meeting, when you passed the legislative agenda, the federal agenda included grants for buses and ITS and transit centers. So we'll be working on those. And in my role on the APTA board, executive committee, and legislative committees, I can tell you that APTA is making good progress on identifying the reauthorization principles and recommendations for the reauthorization of the FAST Act, which we hope to have approved by the fall. However, there was, because the FAST Act expires in September 2020, however, there has been some discussion that, especially Representative DeFazio, who's the chair of the Transportation Committee, is trying to accelerate that. There's been talk of perhaps using that as a catalyst for an infrastructure bill and a reauthorization of the transportation bill. So we are preparing also for quick strike just in case that happens, because it's either going to happen by September or it's not going to happen until after the presidential election. So we are preparing for either opportunity just in case. I would also thank Director Bush and others who were able to participate with staff on Transit Operator and Maintenance Appreciation Day a couple weeks ago, which is a national day to recognize transit operators and maintenance folks for the good work that they do. Earlier this week in this room, Cherriots hosted NTI, National Transit Institute, project management training with about 30 students. 10 of those were Cherriots members. One of the perks of hosting is you get a few extra seats in the class, and so we put as many people as we were able to in that class. And it was great to host them, and I think there was a lot of information learned, and it will help us as we as an organization move with consistent language and consistent methodology as we work on projects. And then my last comment, a couple of some board members may know, longtime customer service rep, retired a few years ago, Harold Clack, passed away last week, and so we'd just like to acknowledge that, recognize, and send wishes to his family and friends.
Thank you. I attended 7 various community and transit meetings the last month. I went to the legislature and testified on two bills. House Bill 2219, which is to extend the West Commuter Rail Service to Salem. Looks like that has passed out of committee with a due pass recommendation, so that may be happening. That is to study extending commuter rail. Another bill, 2603, is to study why the Portland-Eugene Amtrak trains don't run on time, and one of the problems, they want to do a study to determine that, and I have commented for years that they just need to add more double tracks so they can get more traffic over the line. The main thing that we did, this Director Rogers and General Manager Pollock and myself attended the APTA Legislative Conference in Washington, D.C. last week. We had the big issues, and transportation appropriations for the balance of the year was one of the issues, but there's still many concerns about the construction of America's deteriorating infrastructure, and they're looking for ways to finance the needed repairs. The renewal of the FAST Act, as our general manager mentioned, is up next year for another 6 years, and they're hoping, some Congress people are hoping that they can get it moving this year because they feel that next year you're going to have all the turmoil of the presidential election and it'll get lost in the shuffle, and so it will be probably another year, 2021, before anything's done. Their APTA is developing a reauthorization recommendations for this future legislation, and they're circulating among all of the members. One of the other issues is that the transportation fund, the federal transportation fund, is rapidly going into the red, and it looks like it's going to be hundreds of billions of dollars if they don't correct it within the next few years. And so they're looking at ways of correcting it, and one of the short-term things they're looking at is a 5-cent gas tax increase at the federal level, and it would be actually a 25-cent increase phased in over 5 years, and they figure that would do a lot to in the immediate future to solve the problem, but they also need to look at other ways as we get more fuel-efficient vehicles to help them pay for the roads and the transit infrastructure that we need. There's some talk, we have the Buy America policy where a percentage of all our buses or anything we buy has to be made in America. And they're looking, right now the transit districts have to spend money to certify that these vehicles we buy meet the criteria, and there's work being done to change that so that the vendor, the manufacturer, would have to meet those rules instead of the transit district. There's a lot of talk about new technologies, Uber, Lyft, bikes, even these little scooters, how they're going to tie in with transit, and we better, as a transit district, be looking at these new technologies, otherwise we're going to be left in the dust as they take over parts of our business. Both Director Rogers and I experienced the circulator bus, which is a low-cost bus. Actually, it's free now. They made it free the week we were there. I guess they knew we were coming. And so we rode the circulator bus. This year, for the first time, we had a gap in our meetings on Sunday, and so we went down to Union Station for lunch, and then we rode the Washington streetcar, and the Washington streetcars are manufactured in Clackamas, Oregon, which was interesting to know. Some of the other things that I did, I got to talk to vendors. They had a reception sponsored by the alternate fuel buses, the electric buses, and the hybrids, and the fuel cell buses, and got some interesting information talking to them. We'd love to have some in our fleet, but they cost half again as much as the buses that we're buying, so that's one of the reasons we don't have them. We met with the staff of Senators Wyden and Merkley, and we also met with the Federal Transit Administration, and had a very productive meeting with the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee staff, and they're looking at ways to reduce bus costs by maybe reducing the variables in transit buses, so there'd be like a cookie cutter model that you could buy and wouldn't have as many variables, which would cut the production costs. And I might close by saying that unlike last year's trip in 2018, everything went according to schedule. The flights were early both ways, and we got home on time. In 2017, or 2018, all of us got delayed. I did the board meeting, which was the night I was supposed to be home by phone, so we'd have a quorum. And with that, Director Rogers, since you also went to the committee, would you like to start our?
Well, excuse me. Let's see, you forgot riding on the subway. So I can check that off the list. Yes, it was gratifying to see so many different people from different areas of the country all working together for the common cause and working well together. And they're very serious about it. They're looking for volunteers to be on, any committee you want to volunteer for, but basically you're not good to anyone if you don't do anything when you're on it. And so if you're going to be there, they want you to work and not just be, someone to keep a seat warm. And I thought, wow, you don't hear that too often. But I'm glad, to hear that push for, we need help, but if you're going to be here, do something. And it was well worth the trip, even for a new timer like me. But one issue was that now that it's over, I know what's going on. It takes a while to figure out what's happening, different things. Like, we went to, on speaking with staff and explaining the different needs we have and the different pieces of legislation and where those pieces of legislation are. And you kind of learn about that in school, but you get a real education when you're there doing it. And so I would suggest that the next time when you send board members out, if it's their first time, to give them, like a 101, 201 rundown of what to expect and how it all works. A refresher course of sorts. And that's pretty much it. I enjoyed my time and spent a couple extra days there after it was all over to do the sightseeing I wanted to do when I was sitting in the meetings. The first day it poured down hard. It was miserable. I had no umbrella, no hat. Actually, the one place we were at, we're handing out hats. So I did have a hat. They got soaked in 10 minutes, but we had a great time.
Director Lincoln?
Didn't have a very busy month because I was gone for a week, but I did go to the Oregon Transportation Commission meeting last week when they accepted our application among one of 18 for the STIF funds. So that was interesting to hear the comments and be there when they actually voted. I also took some treats and a bouquet and a card out to the Dell Web Center, the Operators Center for Operators Appreciation Day. Talked to some bus drivers there for a while. And attended the SCATS meeting, which I will talk more about in a minute. I think that's at West Kaiser Neighborhood Association meeting, the last board meeting. The SCATS meeting was just Tuesday, and not a whole lot. It was a pretty quick meeting. We're moving ahead on the regional transportation system plan. We'll look at the final draft next month, and then it'll go out for public comment. So if anyone's interested in commenting on regional transportation issues, it'll be online. I'll give you more information next month. That's it.
Director Kelly?
So I did the board meeting, a work session. I met with Alan for about an hour on the Polk County Connect issues, so that if at the area commission I talked to the Polk County Commissioner, I would know some things, which is why I had the figures for the population versus the service allocation. went to a really interesting city club presentation on demographics in Oregon and sort of what sorts of things happen. And we are, in the Salem area, we're sort of like, almost mirror the states as far as age and population, that sort of thing. It was fascinating information from the guy from Portland State who works with the U.S. Census, and so he gave us some updates on what might be happening with the census. I went to the Area Commission on Transportation. We decided to do election of officers, and we have Ken Woods as chair and Kathy Clark as vice chair. There was a question because normally you're supposed to elect officers at the second meeting of the year, but we didn't have a meeting in January and February, so we decided that we'd go ahead and do the election rather than the policies. And had a presentation from Bill Siss, who's a consultant with, oh shoot, I'm not supposed to do this, with ODOT on the Aurora Donald interchange and what things are going on there. There's the 2017 bill approved $25 million for design work for the interchange. And then we had a presentation on the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund, so everybody got to know about the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund and sort of what we're supposed to do. We got copies of 7 applications from this area. If it touches on our area, then we get to review it. So we have one from Tillamook and one from Clackamas County to look at. And we'll be doing that at the April meeting. My only discussion point on that is somehow they need to figure out how to get the print size bigger because I don't think even young eyes can read it very easily. So I'm hoping that I can pull it up and make it bigger on a computer as I'm doing that for next week. We also got a copy of a resolution on the Yamhill County. The Yamhill County Parkway Committee has a resolution that they did, and they want to urge the governor of the Oregon Transportation Commission and the Oregon legislature to pursue any and all opportunities to keep working on the Newburgh-Dundee bypass. And so we had a little bit of discussion on that. We're going to have the next meeting is next week. I'm not sure whether we'll have any follow-through with Newburgh-Dundee bypass. I will just say that my first meeting in 1996 on the Area Commission on Transportation, the topic was Newburgh-Dundee bypass. Things sometimes take a while to get through everything. And I guess that's all I have to say, but it sounds like maybe we need a little bit of parliamentary training for our committees, but I think that what happened was actually probably correct in that part, because if you have a motion and then you have a substitute motion, then you vote on the substitute. You vote whether to accept the substitute motion, but it looks like they just sort of went straight ahead. But you can have a substitute motion without a vote on the original motion.
Yeah, we did, after they left before we finished the process. We actually took steps back and redid it all properly. It was just nobody, we will do the training, but it was just a little confusing for.
Yeah, but it sounds like you sort of had the general idea, and parliamentary procedure is not easy. I got called on it once by one of the board members, and I did what I had always been taught in AUW, and I was right.
Director Bush?
Oh, okay. Well, I attended February's board meeting and March's work session. And then Director Rogers and I attended the budget law training one Saturday. And outside was really nice, but it was a good discussion. Good refresher course, ready for budget season now. And then attended several greeters for Kaiser and Woodburn and Salem, and it's just fun to get to know the community and to continue to listen to conversations. And I had like 3 or 4 people come up and say, we purchased ads on the buses, we really like the coverage it's getting and the cost for what we're getting. So we're doing great in that regard. Our Southeast Kaiser Neighborhood Association met, and we revised our bylaws and voted in new people, and I'm again the secretary, so here we go for another year. Kaiser Cedar Council meetings. I attended the Marion County Commissioners Breakfast with the Kaiser City Councilors. I was at the SEDCOR what does SEDCOR stand for? Salem
Economic Development Corporation.
Strategic Economic Development Corporation.
Thank you. Thank you. So our county commissioners did their state of the county at that time, and that was very interesting and informative. And the Kaiser Chamber hosted the Mayor Clark's State of the City, and she spoke about the homeless initiative, our transportation, and the different studies we're doing in Kaiser to improve our city as far as livability, housing needs, et cetera. And we're going for the future. I attended Honorable Dennis Richardson's memorial service, and that was awe-inspiring and very honorable for him and his family and all those who worked for him and who he represented. I went to the Transit Operators Appreciation Day, got up at dark 30 and got to say, have a great day and how much we appreciate our operators and our maintenance personnel. And then at lunchtime, I went up to the Kaiser Transit Center and took my husband along, and that was a good time as well. I sat in on the STF meeting with Director Thompson and heard all those conversations. And I think that's it. Oh, yeah, I'm done.
You sure?
I am.
Okay. Director Thompson? Oh.
Did you have something?
I forgot to say one thing. So you guys didn't get to meet with congressional people because they were on vacation. I had an opportunity to spend a short time frame with Congressman Schrader at an event. So I always take the opportunity to thank him on behalf of Salem Kaiser Transit when I run into him that way.
Okay, well, mine's going to be short. I attended the regular board meeting and work session and Chamber Policy Committee where we discussed the status of the bonds that are ongoing right now, the school bond and the police bond and that type of thing. That was interesting, and things are going along pretty well. As far as you just had some publicity on the police facility bond that it's short on money, and I suppose they're going to have to cut again. I don't know. They've already cut out about 40,000 square feet of that building because of the construction costs. Went to the SEDCOR, the county status, and that was interesting. Sam Bertano is always kind of a kick. And that's where he made his controversial comment about the third bridge that you'll remember. It was in the newspaper. And then, of course, the STF committee that you heard about tonight. So that's about it.
Thank you. And Director Evans?
I have the minutes or highlights from a meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. They met on March 19th. The committee received a detailed presentation by Ray Jackson from the COG about COG's Regional Transportation System Plan. The committee received a presentation by staff on the upcoming service expansion in September. Also received a staff presentation on proposed new paper schedule and shelter schedule designs. The committee provided valuable input for staff to consider on the proposed schedule design. The committee received a staff performance report on route and ridership indicators and the committee members discussed service issues which they've encountered or stakeholders have encountered, and there were staff members there to respond to their questions. The next quarterly meeting will be on June 18th. That's it.
Thank you.
And then I've done the regular meetings, and then I attended a representative update from Paul Evans at the demo forum, and then did the Can Do in West Salem, and neither one of them follow Robert's rules. Just for the record, they run roughshod over the rules, but they seem to get business done. I actually met independently with one of Paul Evans' staff members, and then Representative Gomberg came in and gave me his 2 cents on the transportation bill, which we had a little bit of a talk as we had lunch together, and then I was at Annette's having lunch with someone and had my pin on from a meeting for transit, and ended up with about an hour-long constituent talk that went on about service on Edgewater and what they liked about it and what we needed to do different, like get Saturday service, which they weren't even aware that it was coming yet, so I enlightened them on that. And I did attend Richardson's funeral. My daughter works for him indirectly through archives and was always impressed with his integrity. And as a tour guide at the Capitol, he would take the time to come out and talk to kids and explain how a bill becomes law. And it was a shame. He was a nice man. So, thank you.
I did forget
Yes. Oh,
a couple things,
Director
sorry.
Thompson?
So did I.
You want to go first?
I don't care, ladies first. please.
Okay.
We'll fight over. I went to the Kaiser Chamber Government Affairs Committee, and since its session is on, there's so many bills that they're concerned with that are dinging small business and they're rallying the troops to get support against many things. And then I did attend the Gubser groundbreaking for their new building that they're doing for the school bond. So, and Mayor Clark was there, and the chamber was there, and some good friends that I hadn't seen in a while too. Okay, now I'm done.
Well, I told you I didn't think you were done.
I know.
I just wanted to say that next week we're having a Special Transportation Fund Committee meeting with our own Ben Featherston as presenting ethics. And if any extra, well, we can't have more than 3 board members there. Are you coming?
I'm fine on it.
Okay,
Unless somebody
maybe
else
one
wants to.
more could come to the meeting, or is that an announced meeting where more than 3 could come?
We're going to do it separately for the boards.
Oh, so we get to do it twice? Okay,
Okay.
okay, disregard.
Anything else for? It's been a long meeting. Thank you all. And remember, 163 days until Saturday service starts.
betcha.
And with that, we are adjourned.